everyone, welcome to Taking It to the Next Level podcast, where we will be discussing the world of DECA and be bringing in different professionals to give us insights into what makes someone successful in today's world. I'm your Central Region Vice President, Amy Barch.
And I am your State President, Zach Spone.
Today we will be introducing our new podcast, introducing ourselves, and discussing what to expect in this upcoming DECA year. So to start off with, I, again, am Amy Barch. I am your Central Region Vice President. I am currently starting my final year in college where I am majoring in the world of culinary arts. I got involved in DECA through my instructors. They really saw a great potential and drive in me and really wanted me to become involved in DECA. From there, I ran for our state chapter secretary position, and I won. And as state began to draw closer, I really was just seeing all the potential in DECA, and I really wanted to make a difference. So I ran for state officer, and I was able to get Central Region Vice President.
Awesome.
Zach?
Okay. Yeah, my DECA story actually begins long before I was in college. It begins when I was a sophomore at Sauk Rapids Rice High School. Sauk Rapids is by the St. Cloud area. I joined DECA as a sophomore. At the time, I was not the best student in the world, but once I became involved in DECA, it really gave me something I wanted to do in school every single day, and it really helped me get involved more and build structure in my life. And as a result, I definitely became a better student afterwards. So as a result of those things, I definitely was involved in DECA throughout my high school career. I made it to ICDC my senior year in high school, and definitely made some of my best friends in high school DECA and now in collegiate DECA as well, that friendships that I'll have my entire life. So moving on to college, choosing a college, definitely, if whether or not the college had a DECA chapter, was definitely a little bit involved in my decision, at least. Currently, I'm starting my junior year as a student at Minnesota State University Moorhead, where I study marketing and political science. As far as my DECA career goes, as freshman, I was just a member in our chapter and went to ICDC in Orlando that year. Last year as a sophomore, I was our chapter's treasurer. Would have went to ICDC, but the world shut down, And then at the state conference last year, I was fortunate enough to be elected state president of Minnesota Collegiate DECA, and that's the role I'm currently serving in now as we enter, I guess, our crazy school year 2020 and 2021.
Yeah. So to start off with, we're just going to introduce our podcast as to the why we're doing this and kind of what the structure and upcoming videos will be like. First off, we wanted to just increase awareness of collegiate DECA. And by having these podcasts, we are better able to reach members or even potential members and just really draw them into the heart of DECA and all of its unique experiences, especially this year. And we are able to also keep current members engaged and have them take it to the next level. Speaking of taking it to the next level, I'm pretty sure you guys may have noticed that is the name of our podcast. It is also the name or the theme of this year's DECA experience for 20 and 2021.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of an insight into our workshopping of the name for the podcast. But another goal of our podcast is definitely to make us state officers a little bit more relatable, or at least accessible in some way. All too often, you may only see your state officers at the state conference or a couple other conferences maybe throughout the year. And by creating this podcast, we're definitely able to become one, more accessible to our members, hopefully, and two, maybe just a little bit more human. So you're not afraid maybe the world, but you may be more likely to reach out to us if you need anything at all. And I think that this series of podcasts may also be helpful to individuals as they kind of go through the DECA year and maybe help people decide, why should we do DECA as well?
Yeah, exactly. And this year will definitely be an interesting year because, as you know, we are in a global pandemic. But because we're doing these podcasts, it allows us to better connect with our members. When we can't really see each other face to face, most of our interactions are going to be over Zoom or just through email and different recordings. So by having these videos posted, it just keeps us able to connect with our members.
Definitely. So now that we've kind of talked about why our officer team is doing this podcast, I think it's important that you know what you're going to get from us. So we're going to talk about the podcast structure and how it's actually going to work a little bit. Each podcast will be anywhere from 10-15 minutes to maybe even 45 minutes, and that's so that one, there's enough content that it's worth your time, but also that's not so long that it's actually digestible and it's actually something you're going to want to take time to listen to. And each podcast will be hosted or at least involved with a state officer, a member of the state officer team. So right now it's Amy and I. Another week it might be another member of our officer team, and they might have a guest, like it might be a member of the national officer team, or it might be a member of the Minnesota Collegiate DECA board of directors, or it might be our executive director of Collegiate DECA, or it might be even a member from the community of one of our chapters throughout the state. So our goal is definitely to have a little bit of a diversity of guests and topics to discuss in the podcast. And that's because DECA really can bring you a whole bunch of different experiences, and it can enrich your life in a whole bunch of different ways. And that's kind of what we want to showcase in this podcast series as well.
Absolutely. And our podcast will also be uploaded on every other Wednesday by 9 a.m. So you can expect to see those on YouTube. We're going to be starting off on YouTube uploading videos. Along with that, eventually we'd also like to get into Apple Podcasts, so then our videos will also transfer over to there. Again, kind of going off what Zach was saying, kind of a broader area of topics we'll be covering will be different DECA events that are coming up, DECA impact stories from officers or previous alumni who were involved in DECA. And then also a major one is how honing different skills in DECA can be used in real world experiences.
Definitely, yeah. And we're all really excited to bring this to you guys as well.
So DECA 2020-2021 is going to be a very interesting year, I would say. Sadly, DECA Inc. has canceled all national conferences for the remainder of 2020. And this includes our pretty big conference in Chicago, which is Engage. However, the show will go on in Minnesota. We have a wide variety of different things that we are moving to virtual, such as innovation, which we will be discussing in further I think it's the next podcast.
Yeah, our
we'll
next podcast,
that.
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then along with that, emerging leaders will also be coming up, and we'll be talking about that and that will be online as well.
Yeah, so just for those of you that aren't maybe familiar with our fall conference series in Minnesota, the Innovation Summit is typically held at the Mall of America, actually, in Bloomington. You do roundtable events and you hear from a keynote speaker, and it's a one-day kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, you have a little competition. Our innovation, we're definitely going to talk about it more as the coming days, I guess you'll find out more information, and we'll definitely talk about it in our next podcast. But it'll be a week-long kind of event instead of just one day, since it's going to be virtual. We're going to get a lot of the same experiences, but now in the competition, there's definitely more of a prize at the end, so it'll be more of an incentive to get involved, so stay tuned for that. And emerging leaders, for those of you that aren't, before I move on, that Innovation Summit is going to be held at the beginning of October. So if you're interested, definitely listen to our next podcast, get the information, and then make sure you're in touch with your chapter advisors and chapter officers to get signed up for that event as well. So moving on now, emerging leaders, that's typically each chapter sends 2 or 3 students to a leadership summit for the day. We are not going to do that in person this year either. That is typically held towards the beginning of November or midway through November. That will be a virtual experience as well, and details will be forthcoming on that as well.
And throughout our series of podcasts leading up to state convention, all of our members of the state conference team will be joining in the podcast. Each one will bring their own topics and skills surrounding DECA, and overall, they'll be sharing their story with our members. Again, I'm Amy Barch.
And I'm Zach Smolin. Thanks for listening.